Indiana basketball goes on the road and loses to Wisconsin. My one question, what was that?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, thank you so much for being here. Shout out to all of my everydayers who listen or watch this show Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. All of our bonus episodes, everything you see and hear on this podcast is free to you. Always has been, always will be. So thank you so much for those of you who show up each and every day. Or if this is your first time here, welcome in, and we're glad that you're here. Indiana basketball goes on the road and just crumbles against Wisconsin. Good thing is they at least did it early. They at least didn't wait 39 and a half minutes to do it. They said, hey, how about 8 minutes? We'll get 8 minutes. That's all we got. That's all we can offer. We're gonna let you go to bed early. Well, I know we made you stay up for this game, and I know it was a late night tip, right? 9 o'clock Eastern time. And we know you're gonna be tired going to work tomorrow. So let's do you a favor, Indiana fan. We'll just go ahead and put this game out of reach within the first 8 minutes. In terms of us losing the game, 76-64. We'll look ahead, big picture. Can it be fixed? All the things we are trying to grasp onto, plus some of those comments from Mike Woodson that have shown us it's going downhill fast. But 8 minutes, that's all it took. That's all it took for Wisconsin to go on two separate runs, go up 26-4, and never look back in this basketball game. I've seen some bad starts this year. You have too for this Indiana team. We've seen some bad halves. We've seen some bad games from this Indiana team. But last night, I think, may have been the worst. It may have been the worst because you were out of it like that. Less than 8 minutes into the game, you were down 26-4. They couldn't miss, you couldn't make, and it was over just like that. Ugly turnovers, missed shots, not getting back in transition, all the same things that we tend to do throughout a 40-minute game, right? Kind of spread out just a little bit. Not this time. They said Indiana showed up and played their worst 8 minutes of basketball of the season. And in that span, made Wisconsin look like a Final Four team. But you could see throughout the rest of the game that they're not, right? We can all tell that Wisconsin's good, not great. They're not even really good. They're just good. Like, we made them look so much better. And looking at the final scoreboard, right, 76-64, it's not the end of the world. This was not a crazy result. And if you don't go down that big with a 13-2 run, an 11-2 run, and go down, end up being 26-4 in this thing, there's a good chance Indiana wins this basketball game. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly. I think if you don't get out to a miserable, worst-case scenario start, I think we're good enough to win this game, which would tell me that we would probably have a little more energy for 40 minutes. We'd have a little bit more focus for 40 minutes. We'd start knocking down our shots over the span of 40 minutes, right? Because you start looking at the numbers and they're not going to blow you away in terms of comparing Wisconsin to Indiana. And you look at this as a 12-point loss on the road, a place that Indiana has not won since the late 90s, folks. I'm going to make some people upset when I say this, and I'm going to age a couple of you, and I don't mean it this way. I'm using it for context. Folks, I have never seen Indiana win on the road in Wisconsin in my lifetime. So that'll give you a little context on who you're dealing with here and how long it's truly been since Indiana won in Madison. But here's the stats that I want to look at here. Did you know that Wisconsin only made 3 more shots than we did? Just 3. We made 23 field goals. They made 26. Did you know that Wisconsin only made one more free throw than we did? We made 11 and they made 12. One of the differences was they made 12 threes and we made 7. A lot of those coming early. A lot of those were wide open. And I told you that Wisconsin's a good enough team. If you leave them open, they will knock them down. 3-point shooting is not their specialty, not this year, but they're good enough to knock them down. So they made only 3 more field goals than you, but they made 5 more threes. It's 15 points, you lose by 12. Simple math, right? Their shooting percentage was not good. I guess I should say their shooting percentage was average. Their 3-point percentage was good, but again, you left them open. So they're going to knock them down at a 41% clip. That's going to happen. Rebounding numbers, even. 36 across the board. Both teams had 36 rebounds. Didn't feel like it, did it? Did not feel like it at all. Talk about turnovers. We had 11 on the road. Not good. They had 6. Great for them. We didn't force any. And half of our 11 turnovers were just unforced. Bad, lazy passes. Bad decisions. So I'm trying to tell you here. And also, let me add more context to this. There was no big scorer for Wisconsin. There was no one guy that just destroyed us like we've seen in several other games. Have you looked at their scoring totals, right? 15, 13, 12, and 10. 15, 13, 12, and 10. They only scored 76 points, ladies and gentlemen. This was not a horrific 40 minutes of basketball. It was a horrific 8 minutes of basketball. After that, you win. You beat them after that stretch, especially in the second half where we actually showed a little bit of life. We scored 36. We ran with them the whole way. You close it to 12 right before the half, and all of a sudden, you found yourself in such a deep hole that it was impossible to come out of, especially on the road in the Big Ten. And it's disappointing on so many levels. And I asked the question to Mike Woodson, what was that? I would love to sit down in the locker room with those guys last night and say, hey, what the heck was that? Where did this come from? Like, why is this the performance you put on the road? In a game where I told you yesterday, there was a lot riding on this. We talked about if Mike Woodson was coaching for his job in this game. He didn't save his job last night when you go on the road and lose by 12 to Wisconsin at a place you haven't won since the 90s. And I have more on that. And I have some things on why this game was important and why it's just so baffling to me that this team can't figure out how to show up and play with any sort of heart, any sort of effort, any sort of urgency, and they fall flat on their face again on the road to Wisconsin, losing by 12 in the midweek. All right, coming up, we'll talk about that here a little bit more on Locked On Hoosiers. Can it be fixed? Looking ahead, especially big picture for this Indiana team and this Indiana program. That's coming up right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. Are you looking for tickets for your next big event, whether it's a concert, comedy show, or a sporting event? Finding the right ticket at the right place can be a headache, but with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Game Time Picks for a while now, since they've been with us here at Locked On, and I love it for several reasons. They're all-in pricing. It's a feature that you toggle, and you'll see your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, and the views from your seat. You can see your exact view from every seat in every venue, and it's accurate. I've tested it dozens of times. It is legit. That's why I use the Game Time app. And the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something else comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here and making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. For those of you who are everydayers, you know what to do at this point, right? For my YouTube watchers, make sure you're liking the videos, commenting your thoughts down below, because I'm sure you've got them. And subscribe to the channel if you have not already. We are making, I'm going to look as we are recording this thing live, 4,543. So we're well on our way to 4,600 subscribers. So thank you so much for helping us there. And for my audio listeners, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, whatever one you're on, doesn't matter to me. Just have those notifications turned on and leave us those 5-star reviews. That will make sure you never miss an episode and helps other people find our podcast as well. And we want this community to grow and be as big as possible as we talk all things Indiana athletics. All right, so Indiana goes on the road, right? And we lose to Wisconsin by 12. And it was so disappointing. We asked the question, what was that? Because of how the game started. And as much as I want to look past that and say, yeah, but as I just did in the previous segment, right, talking about the made shots differential and the rebounding category and so many things that if you look at, you say, oh, it's actually not that bad. But you look at this and we flash back to a day ago, and you can go back and listen and watch to yesterday's episode and make sure that I'm not lying to you here. I talked about how Mike Woodson very well could be coaching for his job, whether it was in this game against Wisconsin or just the stretch that we're in overall, right? Terrible start to that stretch with Purdue on Friday in this game against Wisconsin. And it was almost a call out to the players, right? I had a conversation about being in a position where you're playing on a team knowing that your coach could be fired soon at any time, any day. And my thought process was I would want to show up and give him everything I've got. I would want to fight for him. I would want to play with so much effort and emotion that I wouldn't be the one to blame for him being fired. That's just not the case for this Indiana team. They're done. They have checked out. They have given up. They have moved on from Mike Woodson. And when you start hearing things from the head coach like, I can't explain it, I have no words, they didn't show up, they didn't do this, we didn't do that, that's not where you want to be. That's a bad spot. That's a bad sign. If you're a fan, an administrator, a player, an assistant, whatever you are that's affiliated with a team and a program, when your coach starts saying things like he did last night, you know you're done. You know you're cooked. You know that this steak is well done because Mike Woodson has no answers. He has no answers. And he's telling us that every time he steps in front of a microphone. He cannot explain it. He has no other solutions. He has nothing else to go to because his system has not worked. His coaching has not worked. And his players are not working for him. And what's sad is, I think if you bring in, or if you had brought in a different coach this past offseason and they had brought in anything similar to what this roster is right now, Indiana would be a top 25 team. I believe that. I think I have said it since this transfer portal class came through and this roster was finalized for 2024, 2025. I believe this is a legitimate roster in college basketball. And what sucks is you had guys like Mackenzie and Mgbako who got their points last night. Shooting numbers were terrible, but he still got his points. Luke Goody did the same thing, right? Mgbako, Malik, Reneau, on the other hand, no, they got bullied. And my bad for saying, that's on me. I'll take this one. That's on me for saying that Mgbako was a walking double-double. He's going to get his, is what I said yesterday. Not in this game. Not in this game, he didn't. Umar finishes with 4 points and 6 rebounds. Hey, career low, though, for Malik Reneau. Career low in terms of personal fouls. Had one. That's what happens when you only play 17 minutes and only score 6 points in the ball game. Your second leading scorer was Luke Goody with 11. Miles Rice had 10. Thought Miles Rice played fine. I mean, 3 turnovers is not cool. 3 assists, 3 turnovers is not cool, especially early on. But again, the numbers are not just you didn't just get destroyed in the numbers category, and you only lost by 12 after going down 26-4. But I loop back to my argument here of what was that? And that's what I want to pose to this team. Like, where I want to ask where they are mentally, but I think we saw it. I think we saw it firsthand. That's the worst start we've had all year long. That's the worst effort we've given all year long. But yet, then it was like, oh, we're down 26-4. Maybe we should, I don't know, try. Maybe we should put in a little effort. Maybe we should see if we can make a little run. And we did. We started knocking down shots and played a little bit more consistently. We just couldn't climb all the way back. It was impossible. It was impossible, especially for a team like us that doesn't shoot the three ball well and turns the ball over and has terrible offensive sets and things like that. So we were never going to come back from that deficit. But I just don't understand. I don't understand how a team just doesn't show up every single night almost. Not everyone, but just about every single one where you just don't show up because you start looking, right? Look back at this schedule as I pull it up right here. Look back at this schedule. Louisville, you didn't show up. Gonzaga, you didn't show up. Nebraska, you didn't show up. Iowa, Illinois, and then Wisconsin. That's 6 games this year where you have just flat out not showed up ready to play. And you let your body language and your attitude show it. And I don't know how you get rid of that. It's on the head coach. And he said, yeah, it's on me. Thanks, Woody. Appreciate you taking the blame on that one. But he keeps saying things. And again, last night to where I don't know. I can't explain it. I don't have the answers. We're fighting really hard. We're not playing good right now. We're trying to get to where we need to be. Is that all you got? Is that all you got to say? That's all you have to offer up in this horrific stretch where we've now lost 4 games in a row in 6 of our last 7. 6 of our last 7 games. This feels worse than it did a year ago. We're not going to make the tournament. We may not even make the Big Ten tournament. And we're going to have to decline an NIT because we're going to be looking for a new head coach. And that's not where you want to be. I think a lot of you want to be there, I think, because of a new head coach, right? A coaching search. But it baffles me. I'm literally at a loss for words. For a guy that does this for a living, I watched this game last night. I even slept on it. And I'm still at a loss for words because I've never seen anything like it. Really. I've never seen a team who has no care. They don't. And I hate to be that guy that says, oh, they don't care. But I don't think they do. Prove me wrong. Tell me otherwise. Show me something that proves me wrong and says, no, they still care. Yeah, they still want to win. They still want to fight for their head coach. That's just not happening. Let's just call a spade here. Let's just say what's going on. Everybody in that locker room, they're done. They're done. And they're either going to graduate or they're going to transfer and they're going to leave. And that's just the reality. And so you start looking ahead and you start looking big picture for this Indiana team. We'll do that when we come back on our final segment here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. Final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again so much for being here. Really do appreciate you as we're talking all things basketball today. Hopefully some more news for football throughout the week as, hey, spring practice getting closer and closer for Curt Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers. So I have a lot more coverage on that when it gets closer. You start looking big picture, right? You start looking ahead. You start trying to figure out, okay, is this ship going to get fixed? Are we going to get this thing going in the right direction? What is coming up for Indiana, you may ask? Well, as you have lost 4 games in a row, 6 of your last 7, you now come home right on Saturday afternoon, and you get to host a top 25 Michigan team, a Michigan team that I think is pretty good. Do I think they're great? No, but I think they're a pretty good team. Then you go on the road to Michigan State next week in the midweek, who as of right now is a top 10 team. And I think that will probably remain in at least top 15. And you're going on the road in the Big Ten before you come home for UCLA, home for number 7 Purdue. There's only 4 after that. We'll read those for you. Home against Penn State. You make your one West Coast trip to Washington and Oregon before you finish up with Ohio State. And we've looked at this schedule before and we've talked about the quad one opportunities, right? You've still got some on there. Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, Ohio State, Oregon. You've got quad one opportunities here. So if we could somehow catch fire, then there's a big there's a big possibility you could still make the tournament. If. But I have zero confidence. I have none. I have no confidence going into these games anymore. And I held on longer than most, but I've officially gotten to that point of expecting more of the same of what we saw last night, which ultimately will lead to this season ending in just nasty despair. It will lead to a coach losing his job. It will lead to a man losing his job. And it will lead to a university who has been so prestigious and historic decades ago, falling right back to where they started and having to look for a new head coach for the basketball program, which is unfortunate because we're so far behind recruiting, not in NIL, but recruiting, just winning, right? Culture right now. We're at an all-time low at IU. And man, it hurts. It hurts a lot because you don't get excited for the games anymore. I've seen so many of you, and not calling you out in a negative way. This is just, again, context for what we're talking about here. There are so many Indiana fans that I have talked to or seen in the comments or seen on social media that have said, yeah, I've been an Indiana fan for 50 years, 60 years, 40 years, whatever. They said, I don't even know when Indiana plays. I don't even know when we play because I'm so checked out until Mike Woodson gets fired. And I've expressed how I'm not a fan of cheering for somebody to get fired, but I just think it's time. It's time. And I don't know when the correct timeline is. Everybody has their opinion on that. Well, it's best if you do it after this road game, then he doesn't have to walk back inside the gym. Or I give him one more game at home, see if he can figure it out against Purdue. Or I just let him finish out the regular season, then we'll move on. From then, there's no right time to do it. You're firing somebody. You're telling somebody they can't return. And you're also telling an Indiana legend that he basically sucked at his job and we don't want him here anymore. That's a tough conversation to have. But I think we're well beyond that. I think that time has come and gone. Well, that time has come and you've just had it circled in big red Sharpie on the calendar, but now you're looking backwards at it. You go, oh man, still got to do that, huh? Still on the to-do list. Yeah, we'll get to it eventually. It's not going anywhere though, because it's inevitable at this point because of what the product has been on the floor. Last night was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. And it left us sitting around, leaned back in the chair after the game with your head in your hands, just saying, and what was that? What did I just watch? Like, again, it was just so baffling to me. On a 26-4 start for Wisconsin, in less than 8 minutes, this game was over. Over. We shot poorly. Our offense was stagnant. Our defense and transition defense was lazy again. And it looked like it's looked in all other big games. Other than Purdue, this is how every other big game has looked. And because we got it for Purdue, because it was Purdue. But I expect more of the same on Saturday against Michigan. I expect more of the same next week against Michigan State and probably the rest of the way for a team that has given up, doesn't care, and a coach that doesn't have the answers. That's where Indiana basketball rather, sits right now. So we asked the question, what was that? That was Indiana basketball. That was Indiana basketball in the head coach in the era of Mike Woodson as the head coach. What was that? That's what we've seen for almost 3 years now. And it's simple. Until the common denominator changes, nothing is going to change. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here. Wish we had more positive things to talk about in terms of the basketball side of things, but I have a feeling we're going to get some great football stuff coming up in the next few days. We'll have 2 more episodes this week, plus getting into the weekend as well. Reminder, this show is free to you every single day, so be sure that you are subscribed if you can on YouTube, have your notifications turned on audio, so that way you never miss any episodes of Locked On Hoosiers. All right, we are back tomorrow, Hoosier fans. So until then, stay safe. I'll talk to you later.